Welcome to the Loyal Opposition Podcast. I'm Bernie Flowers, one of Uncle Sam's wayward children, and I believe that our country's best days are still in front of us. We got a whole lot to talk about. Robert F. Kennedy Jr., known as RFK Jr., he's a Democrat's Democrat. Both his father and his uncle were martyred defending this country. They are national heroes, JFK and RFK. No family has made more sacrifices for this country than the Kennedys. So when RFK Jr. drops out of the race and endorses President Trump, I pay attention. Now, here we are. We have President Trump against Vice President Harris in about 70 days from now. After both the Republican convention and the Democrat National Convention were held, I ask, who's telling the truth? The Obamas support Vice President Harris. So do the Clintons, Oprah, Big Pharma, big banks, the war machine. They all support Vice President Harris. Elon Musk, Tulsi Gabbard, Vivek Ramaswamy, and now RFK Jr., they support President Trump. Last week concludes the Democrat nomination of Harris as their candidate for president of the United States. Now, I didn't actually watch much of the convention because I get most of my news from the internet and from newspapers. I prefer to read about these things as opposed to being programmed by television. And to me, the network television program is just that, programming. So again, I get most of my information from the internet and from newspapers. But after the conventions and all the fanfare, I looked at the Kamala Harris website and I wanted to see what she stood for. And here's what I saw as of 25 August 2024. Harris Waltz, meet Kamala, meet Tim Waltz, take action, store, and donate. What I don't see is any policy proposals. I don't see the direction that she plans to take us in as a country. What's she going to do for us? I don't see her taking any responsibility for any of the Biden policy adventures that we went through over the past 3.5, 4 years. She was the number 2 person in the United States government. What's she done for us that she can brag about? Why should I vote for her? Democrats have controlled the White House for 12 of the last 16 years, and that means they're responsible for most of the problems that we're experiencing right now. So how has that time and power affected your wallet? How have they been responsible for the endless wars that we're suffering right now? Are they responsible for any of the inflation? Are they responsible for the student loan crisis that so many young people are dealing with? There's a lot to not like about Vice President Harris and her big government ideas. She proposes to impose government price controls on private sector businesses. And if they force us into government price controls in the private marketplace, that's not good for America. Price controls have been tried around the world for a long time, for centuries to be exact, and I don't know of an incident where they've been successful. President Nixon tried it back in the 70s, and all he did was make people mad at him. He made inflation worse. Harris represents a continuation of Bidenomics, and Bidenomics has not been good for our wallets. Inflation has skyrocketed after Biden and Harris took office, and some of the surge in prices were, of course, due to the pandemic, but a lot was due to their policies, and they fueled the problem. And now it's really hitting us really hard. And you can tell when you go to the grocery store and you're in the checkout line and bacon costs $10 a pack. So that is not cool. And the only thing I can see that Harris is proposing is a federal ban on price gouging on food and groceries. And that's all we got. That's the only thing there is. And that's not even on the website. Harris wants to look like she's doing something. And that is what price controls would do for America. A whole lot of nothing. Now, over time, price controls means less competition, and that's bad for consumers. And what we have is evidence that this doesn't work. The free market beats the government every time. And you can look how things are in Venezuela to see what we will turn into if she's allowed to implement the price controls that she's talking about. Now, as for Mr. Trump, I look on his website and I see a list of 15 policy proposals that he plans to put into place over the next 4 years if he wins. There are a few near and dear things to my heart, so I'll just read a few of them to you. He wants to seal the border and stop this migrant invasion. He wants to tackle inflation. He wants to develop an energy policy. He's interested in tax cuts. He wants to prevent World War III by restoring peace and prosperity in Europe and the Middle East. He wants to rebuild our cities. He wants to keep the dollar as the world's reserve currency. These things are near and dear to my desires. And I listened to RFK's historic speech on Friday as well. And in that speech, he laid out why he chose to support Trump and what he intended to do as part of the Trump campaign. And it was very clear and detailed. I'll read a few things to you that I thought were very important. The Democratic National Committee, the DNC, ran a sham primary that was rigged to prevent any serious challenge to President Biden. Then, when a predictably bungled debate performance precipitated a palace coup against President Biden, the shadowy DNC operatives appointed his successor without an election. They installed a candidate who was so unpopular with voters that she dropped out of the 2020 race without a single delegate. Vice President Harris has not appeared in a single interview or unscripted encounter with the voters for over 35 days. This is profoundly undemocratic. How are people going to choose when they don't know whom they're choosing? Instead of showing us her substance and character, the DNC and its media organs engineered a surge of popularity for Vice President Harris based on, well, nothing. Policies, no interviews, no debates, only smoke and mirrors and balloons in a highly produced Chicago circus. That's his words, not mine. Censorship, war, and chronic disease is also something that RFK mentioned. That's what she stands for. He also said back in 1960s, the Democrats were the champions of the Constitution and of civil rights. The Democrats stood against authoritarianism, censorship, colonialism, imperialism, and unjust wars. National political parties, they treat us like elections are a football game where we will support either the red team or the blue team. Well, personally, I say support the team that aligns with you and your values and your family. Support the team that will best support what you believe. Which team encourages peace and prosperity? Which team encourages limited government? Which team encourages more freedom? Which team supports war, pestilence, and bigger government and less freedom? Well, that's for you to decide. Here's a personal question that I have as a black man. How come Democrats claim to promote black conservatives, or better yet, black candidates like Obama and Harris, but Obama and Harris, their ancestors didn't survive the Middle Passage or the Jim Crow South? Neither Harris or Obama's ancestors picked cotton in Alabama or cropped tobacco in the Carolinas. These candidates ain't like us. They are fake black people. They use their experience to further their aims. Kamala Harris strikes me as a race hustler who expects support from blacks, but she's not black. Her only claim to black people comes from her father, and he has said that he's not black. Think of this when you determine who is telling the truth. Well, that's about it for now. This has been the Loyal Opposition Podcast, produced in association with Fallback Productions and other podcasters. I ask that you like, share, and subscribe. Be sure to get your copy of my book, Black Values Matter, available as an ebook on Amazon, Audible, and Apple Books. And also, it's okay to disagree, but if we want our country to prosper, we must insist on unity, transparency, and civility from ourselves and our fellow citizens. Thanks for listening to the Loyal Opposition Podcast. See you next week.